Welcome back to another show of Let the Journey Begin. I am your beautiful host, Alex Meschi, filling in for Hillary Roberts, who's on vacation. And we got Jason Waller here, the real host.
Yes. How you doing, brother? It's good to see you.
Good. How are you? You just had your second COVID birthday.
Jeez, really? I actually, that's funny he brings it up because last year on my birthday, I had COVID.
Right.
So thank God I don't this year. Very happy that I don't have COVID this year. But I'm very excited to be celebrating 35 years of life.
Yeah. And you had a nice birthday party at Solani's, had the family around. I was there. Great steak.
Great place. Well, it's also very important that we are having, I had this birthday celebration, but it was also kind of like a going away party because come March 1st, Ashley and I and the kids are going to be moving out of state. So it's kind of like the last hurrah with everybody coming around. And, it's crazy. We're really excited. We're looking forward to this adventure, but it's also a very sad time. I got 22 family members that live here in Orange County. And between all of that, it's all I know though. I've been here for 35 years and born and raised right up the street at Hoag Hospital. And this is what the gifts of sobriety have been able to allow me these opportunities to be able to take moves and chances like this, because when I'm using, I literally couldn't leave my front door, let alone leave the city, the county, the state. And so this is going to be a really cool opportunity for me and my family to do this. We will miss our family a lot and our friends, but again, we can come back. But so it was special. This birthday was really special, and 35 was a milestone. I never thought I was going to make it past 21. So here we are today.
But I will say, for those of you back east, watch out.
Coming to the South. Yeah.
So we have a great guest today, and I'll forward that. I've known you for over 31 years now. I've met most of your family, in passing at an event or here or there. But in the last, I would say, year or so, I've had the fortunate experience of really getting to know your aunts and uncles. We had that motorcycle trip with Uncle Charlie, a ton of memories, a lot of laughs,
Yes.
Probably too many laughs. And, him being married to your aunt, whom I have met multiple times, but never really talked to. I don't know why you were holding out on me.
All right. Before we have our special guest on today, I just want to let you guys know, as a reminder, you now are able to leave a rating and a review on Spotify. So if you listen on Spotify, please take a second and leave us a message and a review. Give us 5 stars. We appreciate that. No, I am very, very happy to have my Aunt Cathy here. As growing up, I was bribed to call her Queen Cathy, even though she is the queen. No, but she is an incredible woman. She's been very instrumental in my life, and obviously just been very close with our family, and has always been around, been present, been there for anything that we've ever needed. And obviously love and care about you very, very much. And but Cathy and I both have endured addiction, and there's a lot of relatability on that, especially from the family dynamic. And our stories, it's crazy to look at the family dynamic of this. But what's really crazy is, even though we've talked and we've had very in-depth conversations, I think today is going to be really cool, because I don't know that I've heard, the full gist of this. I mean, we've talked in certain areas and elements around what we've gone through. So I'm really happy that you're here. I'm really excited that you're here. And it's amazing because you just had a craniotomy just 5 months ago. And the fact that you are here and present, walking, standing, talking is incredible. So thank you for coming in, and thank you for being part of the show.
Jason, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. No. Yeah. Well, look, so we like to introduce our guests with one question. Okay. And that would be, Cathy, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I really wanted to be a mommy.
Yeah.
When I grew up. I'm still waiting to grow up, but I'm a mommy to many other people's kids. And I have a beautiful stepdaughter, Jocelyn, 34 now. I've known her since she was a very talkative, in the backseat 6-year-old of the car. Nonstop talk.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah. And so I'm really fortunate that we have a big family and that y'all have kids. And you like my accent?
Yeah, duh, y'all. Throwing it in there.
Getting it in there. So, yeah.
So wanted to be a mom. And so going through the stages of life though, and experiencing, what we've experienced, what were some of those things that potentially drew you off course from being a mom?
Okay. Where do I start?
Right.
Drew me off course. I grew up in a pretty rough household. My parents loved me. I know that for a fact. My mom was an alcoholic practicing. She had some times of sobriety, but it was difficult. I never quite knew what to expect when I got home. There was some violence in the house, and I grew up watching that, and that's where my codependency started to build. I think I tried to fix it all. I just go in as a 6-year-old and say, don't do this. Let's go do something. Don't you love each other? And so that was interesting when I look back.
At 6 years old.
6 years old. Yeah. Thank goodness I had a wonderful grandfather, and he took me in quite a bit. He taught me piano. He, would sit down with me and make me do my math and spelling. And so for that stability, I'm forever grateful that I had that stability, because that was really about it.
So witnessing those events when you were 6, did they kind of create a perception or perspective that may not be normal? Or how did that affect your mindset around, parents or a spouse and things
growing
like
up
that?
in general?
It definitely affected me. It changes who you are. But I didn't know that till much later. And it made me, like I said, codependent in a way. I did not feel safe. So safety has been a big issue for me, always. As I said, my parents, I know they loved me, and there was good times. There was a lot of good times. But it did make me not sure about relationships and caused me relational problems in my marriages. I'm on my 3rd and sticking. I'm not going anywhere. Neither one of us are good. No. So we're in it. We're in it for the long haul, for sure. Been together, 25 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But looking at, and again, this, when Cathy's referring to her mom and dad, those are obviously my grandparents.
Yes.
My grandmother and my grandfather, who I love very much. And again, it's kind of hearing this, there's an emotional statement to it, because it's also, as I was young and my grandparents were a lot older, I didn't get to see or, experience a lot of this stuff to the degree that you did. So this is fascinating for me to hear this stuff. And also it's sad, but it's also the real thing. So going through that and being 6, my guess is this progressively probably got worse with mom and dad.
It was pretty bad. It didn't get much worse. It just continued, and that's bad enough. It was very volatile, and at times it wasn't. Like I said, I'd like to throw that in there because I don't want to say it was all bad, but it just put me in a sense of anxiety. I didn't understand again till I got older what was going on with me, but there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of distrust.
How long did this go on?
Until I moved out when I was 18. It was when I saw it, and then I continued it in my first marriage, unfortunately.
But so 12 years though of this of witnessing and having to experience what alcoholism looks like within the house. And,
yes.
Obviously grandma being in and out of recovery. She ended up getting sober at one point later down the road, correct?
Correct. She did. Yes, she did. She had
grandpa,
15 years of sobriety before she died.
Yeah.
But they were really great years.
Correct.
And she did have some time in between there. She did.
On and off. Yeah. And then grandpa obviously struggled with alcoholism.
Grandpa.
Yeah. And so going into that, so now you're out of that environment, you've experienced and witnessed a lot of those, and unfortunately those are a lot of that stuff that you're talking about is traumatic events that can really ingrain somebody, whether we know it or not, to make decisions, right? And so now we're dealing with shame, we're dealing with guilt, we're dealing with depression, anxiety, all these different things that we go through and that attribute to our mental health and our well-being. And so when was it that you started to encounter your own, when was your first encounter with drugs, and where did that take you? Drugs
Well,
or alcohol?
I'm kind of embarrassed to, well, I'm very embarrassed to admit it, but I probably started smoking pot around 15 back in the day. And then my brother, who would come in from Hollywood, who's now deceased, but he'd bring some cocaine and I would always find it. And I would just, I don't know, I had a nose for it.
Yeah. That's no pun intended there. I love that.
I know. So I was really looking for a way out from an early age on.
Yeah.
And I liked the way it made me feel. I liked the escape. Oh, and then I had a boyfriend when I was 15 and he was 18. He came across some pharmacy grade meth, basically.
Wow.
I guess one of his friends stole it. But boy, that was when hell broke loose for me.
When was that? When were you starting to use meth?
Oh gosh, I probably was 17 or 18. I remember going to Knott's Berry Farm, and I'll never forget all the lights and everything.
Right.
Yes, and that's when mini whites were big in high school. That was a form of speed. So that was my drug of choice, was speed. It helped keep me skinny. I tended to be shy, so it made me more talkative.
Right.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to feel like, because didn't realize I was depressed at the time, but I was.
Yeah.
Dealing with depression, and so that fit the bill for me.
And so as this was going on, though, as you're, from the experimental ages of 15 to going into your, later teens, early 20s, where was mom and dad in this, and what was their thought process, perception, or were they checked out?
No, they were doing their own thing. Mom was still drinking quite a bit. Dad was working all the time. My older brother, your dad, had his own parties going on. He seemed to have a lot of, friends over all the time. He was just in high school too. So it was kind of a party atmosphere.
Right.
Really. And mom was right there with us.
So interesting.
But nobody really knew what I was doing. It was very secretive.
Right.
This older boyfriend that I had, which was, not good for me. But my parents, like I said, they said, well, we trust you.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
So were they actually present and cared what you did, or were they just present in like physical form? Just they were around, but you were pretty much autonomous to kind of roam about the cabin.
Yeah, that's the way it was. It was, like I said, they were doing their own drama things. And so I was just kind of
So where do as this is all progressing, I mean, just the environment, and I'm kind of almost getting a visual. And again, because you guys grew up Whittier and then down in Lido, right here in Newport Beach, and that's where we are right now. And just kind of like literally thinking about this out loud, and some of the stories my dad's told me, and Uncle Bobby and yourself, and so you guys are down here in this party atmosphere. Mom and dad, again, dad's working, mom's kind of part of the process and hanging and doing the deal. So where does this ultimately start to take you? As you're getting older in your 20s, 30s, kind of give us kind of an umbrella understanding, because this unfortunately went on for quite some time.
It did. I wanted to get out of the house, so I found someone that would marry me, and we got married. I was married at 19. He was 20, I think, and so I thought that was going to fix everything. Thought I'd, be having my kids and just the white picket fence and everything, but it turned out to be a very violent marriage. He was, in fact, I knew that before we got married, but that's how much I wanted to get out of the house. And he accepted my want of drugs. He would sometimes get them for me, or whatever that was, whether a prescription from his parents or, something. There was something I was always seeking, something. It was like I just needed something. And he always called me fat, even though I weighed like 115 pounds. That's when I got back to crystal meth, because I thought this will do it.
Was he using or drinking alcohol with you, or was he just supplying you?
He did use once in a while, but I would call him a normie.
Yeah. But for, we're a product of our environment, right?
Yeah.
And so when you were in the state of mind that you were in, you're naturally attracting that unhealthy
Exactly.
behaviors. And that's kind of what unfortunately comes out of that stuff, right? And so So you get out of this marriage, after that
10
goes
years.
on, 10 years of the back and forth. So, I mean, you're experiencing now, how old are you at this time after that marriage ends?
30.
30. So, I mean, you're looking at 20, you're at 6 years old when you started experiencing this stuff. So you're at 24 years of just enduring. I'm gonna
pat myself on the back. I'm sorry, I forgot.
24 years of endured trauma.
We're not done yet.
Well, and the thing, just looking at how far we've come today with mental health, substance abuse, addiction, like with all the resources, the tools and stuff. And we just have gotten these within the last 10 years or less, right? Like,
it's amazing.
And you look at like what you guys had to do. I mean, being in your 60s, having to look at what you guys had to go through and the processes of just going to support groups or, maybe seeing a therapist here and there. But other than that, there was no real support when you're seeing all these types of things. Mm-mm. And so it's like, it's crazy to see the generational gap and what's really just from the addiction and mental health standpoint of what you've had to go through and literally live through and walk through. Yeah, it's one thing, but as you get older, it's, to go back and have to relive these things. There's a huge, it's hitting me now, like how big of a disconnect that is for somebody such as yourself, like going back and working on trauma from so long ago.
I really didn't have anyone to talk to about that. And in fact, in my day and age, you didn't talk about it. Like with my grandpa, who I said was very stable in my life, we didn't talk about what was going on at home.
Now because I know my great grandfather was a very loving, caring, just a great man.
He was.
And so where was he during all of this?
He would come to the house, watch me swim, watch all the kids swim. He just, was he gave us a lot of attention, which was really important. But he lived close by, and I would go to his house most of the time. So like I said, his wife died when I was 6. Everything happened. My little sister was born when I was 6. But yeah, so he came around often. He took me to my piano lessons and drove me around because my parents didn't. My mom, you couldn't depend on her.
Right.
Never knew.
So 10 years of enduring this first marriage. Now you're 30. You say it keeps going. Where to go from there?
Then I went to the nightclubs.
That was just during the day. Now it's time for the night.
Laguna Beach. Then I really went wild. No. And I didn't have a lot of connections. I don't know why, but I didn't. And that was a good thing. But the bands did. So I made it work, that way. And
right.
I never got super, super bad. But, I could have gone, like, sure, I'll sleep with you for Coke or whatever you got. But thank God, I always pulled back at that time. And I got a little bit, but it was always I was like, I want more. I need more.
Yeah.
So I knew once it got in me, it was bad because that's all I could think about.
So what was the breaking point of, God, it's crazy to think like, going on that 30 years of this. And when you live that long and you're doing it that long, it almost just kind of like a lot of people just kind of go through it, they just stick through it and they don't want to change. So what was that moment of clarity? What was that changing point for you?
Well, like I said, there was always a nagging conscience inside of me, a faith-based, reality that said, this is not who you are. I didn't make you to do this. And so it just got to the point where I was spinning out of control. I was using at work. I was lying to all my friends, lying to everybody. I think I got in a few accidents. Oh yeah, I broke my back. I rear-ended somebody. I was up for 3 days, and then I rear-ended somebody, and the police department said they could hear the crash. And luckily, I didn't have anything on me at the time, and they tested me for drinking, but not for drugs. And I rear-ended somebody, got sued for $99,999.99 because I had a $100,000 coverage, and they won. But I broke my back, broke my nose, lots of, stuff. And that's when I went into rehab for the second time, I believe it was. The first time was 1987. Just had enough, just enough. I couldn't handle it, doing it anymore. So then the second time was 1989. So I had 2 years, something like that, years of sobriety. I think it was over a relationship. I went out.
Right.
yeah, that was always my downfall. I'd go out over a relationship breakup or problems. So then I got back into rehab, 1989. Then I moved to San Pedro, which was a bad idea.
Yeah. I didn't even know you lived in San Pedro.
I did. And I lived in Long Beach for a while. It was nice in Belmont Shores, but I drank and used the whole time.
Yeah.
And moved to San Pedro, which was worse. Because then I'd drive to Wilmington or wherever in my BMW to look for drugs at 3 a.m.
Oh boy.
in bad neighborhoods. It was by the grace of God that I didn't die.
So this is all progressing, and now you're entering into treatments. Obviously, you're identifying that there's an issue. Was that something that you wanted to do, or did mom or dad initiate or suggest going to treatment, or was it because you're saying there was a spirit inside you?
My dad did recommend it. He said, do or don't, you've got to do something.
Time to get some help.
Time to get some help. So he was the only one that really paid attention at that point. And so he said, and I thought to myself, well, maybe if I go, then my little sister will go. So that's why I went that time. It's a little hazy because, I had a brain tumor and I had it removed. But,
but this is,
but it's a little hazy time-wise. I mean, it's interesting to go back because there is a lot of trauma.
Brain trauma or not. I mean, for me, I only got to go back, like when I was going back 10 years, I'm like, this is way too much.
Well, if it makes you feel better, you're remembering stuff that was when him and I were born. I don't remember when him and I were born, so you're totally fine.
No, and like we're going through a lot of the emotions and a lot of the stuff on this.
Yeah, well, it brings up stuff too.
Well, it does. It brings, and it's hard to go back and again, as I don't want to focus too much on that. I just wanted to kind of encapsulate the story for everybody, and so looking at after all that happens, you're late 80s, going into the early 90s. You did have this spiritual or spiritual awakening. Kind of God was telling you, obviously it wasn't enough at that point, but what became that point where it was like, look, what was that last straw when you're like that moment of clarity where you're like, look, I got to do this. And we're something stuck.
I was able to almost had an out of body experience and look at what was going on in my life and the violence that was still there and how it was always around meth or coming off of it or something. And I went, there is a definite connection here. This is not working. This is not good. So that culminated with, failing relationships, trying to take care of my stepdaughter, who wasn't my stepdaughter at the time, but we were together, and putting her through this kind of stuff. It was just too much for me. And I said, I can't do this. I have to surrender. I did it before, and I knew if I got on my knees, that would be, that would work because it did before. And I'd always put that off because I wasn't done. But I knew if I reached out for my Heavenly Father, that He would give me everything I needed to get it done. And so I immediately went to rehab, checked myself in, which has been a couple times now. Because there's been a little, detours along the way. But I did manage to get, the first time I got 5 years of sobriety. And the next time I got 10 years of sobriety. And then I started dabbling in prescription drugs because I had depression, don't you know? And then I was diagnosed with ADHD or ADD. So Adderall and Xanax, little by little, even though I was doing the program, but I didn't feel honest about it. So honesty is a big thing.
Yeah.
So I started getting on that stuff. And then before you know it, a month's prescription would be over within 2 weeks. And then I'd be miserable for 2 weeks. And I go, what the hell am I going to do? So then when I started looking outside of my doctor, looking on the street or with old acquaintances, I thought, this could be a problem.
Yeah.
Took a couple months, though. It's really sad how we play games with our mind, and go, well, I need this. I have to have this, But I've been clean and sober once again for over a year.
It's amazing.
Thank goodness. And I look back and go, but don't you miss it? And I don't. I really don't miss the drugs. I don't. I mean, there's other ways to calm myself. No,
this is the best place, again, considering everything that you've gone through, but mentally, emotionally, this is like one of the best places I've ever seen you in. And I knew you when you had years and years of sobriety. But I think there's still a lot of work that you were doing on yourself and to get you where you're at. Just even like I was saying, we were all together last night. Yeah. And just in a different place, and it's really, really powerful. And prescription drugs are very, very, I mean, again, they can be that, my relationship that I had with Adderall and what it can do to somebody. Yeah. And it can destroy you. It can really take everything away. But I'm just so grateful that you're here, and I'm so grateful that you shared a lot of that stuff with us,
thanks.
But have you gone back and processed or done any trauma work regarding all this stuff that happened when you were younger?
I'm actually going through that now.
Okay.
I have a really great therapist, and but thank you for the jog of memory, because we're starting to get into it in counseling, and this reminds me just how much there actually was over a long period of time. And it's I don't want to say no wonder I used, but at the same time, no wonder I used. It was my way of coping, and thank God there's more ways now. You don't have to go down that.
No, 100%.
Don't, because that's misery.
And I guess, like, what would be some advice if there's some people that are maybe going through, just from your experiences, and I know you're learning and going through the processes yourself, but if there's somebody that's struggling or seeing some of these things, is there any advice that you could give them from your perspective right now on, from your younger self? Would there be something else that you would say, or guidance or direction in our current state? Because there's a lot of people out there that are experiencing this, whether it's the domestic violence, whether it's the abuse, whether it's the addiction, the loneliness, the sadness. I mean, we're at an all-time high right now.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you could say to anybody right now, or just words of encouragement?
Sure. I would say, especially for the domestic violence, it's not your fault. It can be habitual, but it is not your fault. Find your worth. Go out there and get a good therapist, a good mentor. Drugs are not going to help. Drugs and alcohol is just going to mask it. It's going to, postpone the inevitable, which is either you're going to die or you're going to get help. And it's a much better life out there. There is definitely hope. There's a lot of great resources now. You're worth it. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
100%.
Yeah.
So what do you do now, like this last year? I mean, what is minus having a major brain surgery and going through those things, but what are some of the things you're doing for yourself to maintain and sustain your sobriety?
I have a great support system. I do daily devotionals with my friends that are in the program.
Yeah.
And so that's a daily thing. So I have a great relationship with God. Pray, meditate. When I feel kind of like weird, or if I want to, why can't I just get one Xanax, whatever. I think it through, and I have people I can talk to about it. And
when you say think it through, you kind of play the tape out more, like if you were to get it, what would potentially happen.
Right. First of all, I'd feel dishonest.
Yeah.
Because I'd probably want to hide it.
Yeah.
And honesty for me is huge. Yeah. I really have to be honest. I mean, and that's what I do. I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm authentic, good and bad. And as we talked about, I went through this non-cancerous brain tumor removal 5 months ago. I had a wonderful surgeon, didn't have to have pain pills, nothing like that afterwards. It was incredible that God brought me through it, and I knew He's not done with me, because otherwise I'd be done.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of plan in there, and it's been some recovery time. And I just feel like even being here today, maybe, new things are opening up, and who knows? I'm open.
Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. No, but it's also, again, as I think the core thing that I see just from the outside is that your foundation and your fellowship is huge. And you do have that service component and especially giving back but you're really connected within the church, and
yes,
it's really, really important. Everybody, and that's again, is I think what every guest we've had on here, there's so many different ways, so many different takeaways that people can have and what works for them. This is a multifaceted disease. It is cunning, baffling. And it affects people in all different ways. And that's why I think it's, again, there's a lot of ways to recover. And there's not just one way. There's not a cookie cutter model to this. How I got sober is different than how you got sober, and how, if Alex was in recovery, how he would get sober. And again, as we can pull and take from what our experiences have been and what works for us and plug it in. And it's just incredible to see where you're at, especially for all that you've endured. Like, I know some of the history around stuff, and especially with the family. I mean, we are pre-genetically disposed to alcoholism. I'd say well over half our family struggles with addiction and or some form of mental health. And, it's the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and it's crazy because, I didn't experience a lot of those things growing up. I honestly had I'd say overall a pretty good childhood. I mean, there's some things, growing up that I think every kid endures to some degree. Mm-hmm. But, to the depths that you guys and, what you went through and, my aunts and my dad, and it paints a clear picture, and it's good to get an understanding and a history of where we come from, so we can better understand what it is that we go through, because trauma definitely is ingrained, and your body does keep the score around that stuff, and it can come out in various ways. So this is very, very special. This is a very different type of style podcast that there's some similarities to it, but this was really cool. It gave me a better understanding, and just appreciate that.
Thanks.
I appreciate you being open and honest.
Jason and Alex.
Yeah, no, this was great. I mean, I've had a lot of fun learning about your family over the last couple of years. Granted, I've known the guy for 31 going on 32 years. And now that we're older, being more connected with the Wallers, it's been very fascinating and intriguing. Because, when we're kids and we're out back playing baseball or, running around in the streets and stuff, you don't know about any of this going on. You don't know anything under the covers or under the hood. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely eye-opening. But the thing that I keep hearing ring true is that getting connected, whether it's connecting with God or a higher power, connecting with fellowship or friends, connecting with either yourself, like you playing the tapes out in your head of what could happen. Connection is the key.
100%. Connection is key, but I think the big thing that I took away from Cathy and the thing that kept me sick was honesty. And it wasn't even that I was being dishonest with other people, as I was dishonest with myself. Mm-hmm. And that's what kept me sick, is I would be lying to myself so often, and I couldn't get out of that way of thinking. And that's just the disease of addiction. Yeah. And, but Kath, if you were to leave, we asked our closing question to everybody is if you could have one action for the day to give as a piece of advice out there for our listeners, what would it be?
You're worth it. This is a place for quitters. Quitting is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about loving each other and accepting myself for who I am. I have a disease. I'm dealing with it. Left untreated, it will kill me.
Yeah.
But there's lots of great places to go for treatment, and reach out to people, because there's a lot of us out there.
I love that. You're worth it.
You're worth it.
It's a great way to think about it, because you guys are worth it. You are.
Absolutely.
This is powerful, Kath. This is very meaningful to me. And like I said, I'm so grateful for you and love you very much and appreciate you being on here and sharing your story with us.
Right on. It was fun.